One word, that is all it takes sometimes. One word between a mother and her daughter. One word that starts a chain of events that nobody can take back. That word was no. Nancy Guthrie said no. And 2 weeks later, she was gone. In May of 2025, 8 months before Nancy disappeared, a document was signed, a durable power of attorney. Tommaso Kyan signed it. The document named Annie Guthrie as his agent over financial and property matters. Annie Guthrie drives a Honda CR-V. The FBI seized it. They held it for over 40 days. 40 days is not standard processing for the vehicle of a person who has been publicly cleared. A routine forensic sweep of a cleared witness's car takes hours, maybe a day or two. 40 days means a forensic team found something that required extended analysis. Snorts. On February 1st, 2026, at 12:03 in the afternoon, Annie Guthrie called 911 to report her mother missing. That call has never been made public. Not the recording, not a transcript, not even a summary of what was said. In Arizona, 911 recordings are public records. Reporters can legally request them. In most high-profile missing persons cases, the recording surfaces within days. 3 months into this investigation, nobody has heard music, what Annie said. He said there is probably investigative information on that recording that our detectives do not want the public to hear. He said not to hold your breath waiting for it. And then he said the thing that matters most. He said the call might not surface until a trial date approaches. No. One word from a mother to her daughter. A loan request denied. And 2 weeks later, the mother vanished from her home in the middle of the night, leaving behind blood on the front porch, smashed cameras, and a pacemaker that recorded 41 minutes of terror before losing contact with a monitoring unit at 2:28 in the morning. 3 months into the investigation of Nancy Guthrie's disappearance, a financial trail has surfaced that gives this case something it did not have before. A documented, sequenced, undeniable reason. Not a theory, not speculation. A chain of events that begins with a durable power of attorney signed in May 2025 and ends with boxes being carried out of a $1 million home whose owner has not been declared dead and whose disappearance is still classified as an active federal criminal investigation. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old. She is a mother, a grandmother, a woman of faith who attended church every Sunday morning without fail. She raised her children largely on her own. She lived in a beautiful home in the Catalina foothills neighborhood of Tucson, Arizona, a home she had been in for decades, valued at roughly $1 million. She tended her garden. She sat on her porch. She kept to herself. She was not a public figure. She never wanted to be. She had a pacemaker that helped regulate her heart. She took medication every night at 10 o'clock. She wore hearing aids that came out before she went to sleep. She was 84 years old. She was alone, and she was completely unprotected. On the evening of January 31st, 2026, she had dinner with her daughter Annie and Annie's husband, Thomas Ocean. She went home, and she was never seen again. When this document surfaced online, people with legal backgrounds were quick to respond. Several of them said it was routine, standard paperwork for a mortgage refinance or property transfer. And maybe that is exactly what it was. But here's what nobody said out loud. The timing places a document in a specific sequence. May 2025, power of attorney signed. Sometime before January 31st, 2026, Annie reportedly asks Nancy for a loan. Nancy says no. January 31st, 2026, Nancy has dinner at Annie and Thomas's home. February 1st, 2026, Nancy is gone. The sequence is a direction, and the direction is financial. In May 2025, 8 months before Nancy disappeared, Thomas Ozian signed a durable power of attorney naming Annie Guthrie as his agent over financial and property matters. The document may be routine, standard paperwork for a refinance or property transfer, but the timing places it in a chain that connect a legal instrument to a loan request, to a refusal, to a dinner, to a disappearance. And when every link in that chain involves the same two people, Annie and Thomas, dismissing the sequence requires ignoring its direction. A publication called Hayden Times reported that Annie asked her mother for a loan in the weeks before January 31st. Nancy said no. The amount is unknown. The reason is unknown. The exact date of the conversation is unknown. The claim has not been confirmed by law enforcement, has not been addressed by the family, and has not been denied. What is known is that the claim landed in the middle of a case where financial questions had already been accumulating for months. Property values, legal documents, a vehicle held for 40 days, and boxes leaving a home whose owner is still missing. The loan refusal did not create a new story. It gave an existing story a starting point it did not have before. The two properties tell a story of their own. Nancy's home in the Catalina foothills is valued at roughly $1 million. Annie and Thomas's home, approximately 4 miles away, is estimated at $650,000, a $350,000 gap. On its own, the gap means nothing. Parents often have more than their children. But in cases where an elderly person is harmed by someone in their own circle, the most common motive is not rage and not revenge. It is access to assets. Assets that become available when the owner is no longer present to say no. Nancy Guthrie was completely unprotected on the night she was taken. The family dog had died, no replacement. The camera system was not actively recording, not subscribed. Her hearing aid came out every night before bed. She was completely deaf to anything happening around her. Her medication sat on the counter at 10 o'clock every night. Miss it and the consequences could be serious. No caretaker, no overnight help, no medical alert pendant, no alarm system. $1 million home, an 84-year-old woman, zero protection. Now, here is a part that should disturb you. None of those protections are expensive. A camera subscription costs about $15 a month. A medical alert pendant costs less than $1 a day. An overnight caregiver through a home health agency in Tucson runs a few $100s a week. These are not extraordinary expenses. These are basic precautions that families with elderly parents living alone put in place as a matter of course. The Guthrie family had the resources. Savannah Guthrie is one of the highest paid broadcast journalists in the United States. Zero protection. $1 million home and an 84-year-old woman with a pacemaker, a daily medication regimen, hearing aid that came out at night rendering her completely deaf, no alarm system, no medical alert pendant, no overnight caregiver, no active camera subscription, and no family dog. The dog had died. No replacement was obtained. Every single one of those safeguards is inexpensive. A camera subscription costs $15 a month. A medical alert pendant costs less than $1 a day. An overnight caregiver through a home health agency in Tucson costs a few $100s a week. The combined family resources across 3 children, including Savannah Guthrie, one of the highest paid broadcast journalists in the United States, were more than sufficient to cover every one of those measures with a single phone call and a credit card. None of it was done. Nancy was left in $1 million home with no security, no monitoring, no overnight help, and no way to call for assistance once her hearing aids came out at night. And if Annie was in a financial position where she needed to ask her 84-year-old mother for money and was refused, then the question of why nobody invested in basic protections for Nancy takes on a different dimension. It stops looking like an oversight. It starts looking like a choice. A choice that left Nancy Guthrie completely reachable to whoever came for her on February 1st. And if you want to follow how the financial trail, the DNA evidence, and the sealed 911 call develop, make sure you're subscribed. Because in this case, every update has changed what we thought we knew. At approximately 9:50 in the evening, Tommaso Kion drove Nancy Guthrie home. That drive is 4 miles. It takes about 10 minutes, and it is completely undocumented. No third-party camera recorded the departure. No rideshare app generated a timestamp. No neighbor witnessed the arrival. Tommaso says he walked Nancy inside. He says he watched the garage seal behind her. He says he left. That account stands completely alone. There is no corroboration from any independent source. The last person to see Nancy Guthrie alive was a husband of a woman who had been refused a loan. Thomas Ocean drove Nancy home at approximately 9:50 p.m. 4 miles, 10 minutes, and the ride is completely undocumented. No third-party camera, no rideshare timestamp, no neighbor who witnessed the arrival. Thomas says he walked Nancy inside. He says he watched the garage door close behind her. He says he left. That account stands alone. There is no corroboration from any independent source. And in any serious investigation, when the last person to see a missing woman is the spouse of someone with potential financial motive, that account does not get accepted at face value. It gets examined. The FBI examined it. They examined it for 40 days. Annie's Honda CR-V was seized and held for over 40 days of forensic analysis. 40 days is not standard processing for a cleared witness's vehicle. A routine sweep takes hours. A thorough examination might take a day or two. 40 days means a forensic team found something that required extended analysis. Or the data pulled from the car's onboard systems, GPS routes, door events, speed, timestamps, did not immediately match the story investigators were given. Modern vehicles record everything. If the story is that Thomas drove Nancy home and went directly back, the car's telemetric data should confirm that within 48 hours. 40 days means something in that vehicle needed to be understood before it was returned. And the FBI has not told the public what they found. That silence is itself information. From the moment the garage door closed behind Nancy at approximately 9:50 p.m. to the moment Annie called 911 the following afternoon at 12:03, 14 hours and 13 minutes passed. During those 14 hours, nobody from Annie's household contacted Nancy. No text, no call, no drive-by, nothing. Nancy was 84 years old with a pacemaker, dependent on medication that the sheriff described as potentially fatal to miss. She was about to remove her hearing aids and become completely deaf. She was alone in a house with no active cameras, no alarm, no medical alert, and no caretaker. The people who drove her home knew all of this. And from the moment the garage closed until a church friend called the next morning because Nancy had not appeared on a Sunday morning live stream, there was complete music silence. In families where a parent is aging alone, the goodnight call is automatic. The morning check-in is routine. A 3-second text, home safe, love you, is a kind of small act that exists because people care. That ritual was absent on the night of January 31st. And its absence created the exact operational window that whoever took Nancy required. No interruption, no unexpected visit, no phone call that might have been answered by someone other than Nancy. A clean 14-hour block where the only mechanism for discovering that something had gone wrong was a church friend who noticed an empty chair. The lone refusal does not change the facts of that silence, but it changes what the silence might mean. The absence of a good-night call from a daughter who just had dinner with her mother looks different when that daughter was recently refused money. It stops looking like forgetfulness. It starts looking like distance. The kind of distance that exists when a conversation has gone badly and neither party wants to revisit it. Or the kind of distance that exists when the person who should be calling already knows that calling would serve no purpose, music, because they already know what has happened inside that house. Now think about the 7-minute gap. Annie arrived at Nancy's home at 11:56 in the morning. She called 911 at 12:03. 7 minutes passed between arriving at the home of a missing 84-year-old woman and picking up the phone to call for help. If she found blood on the front porch within the first minute of arriving, and the blood was in a location that would be difficult to miss, then 6 minutes passed between seeing evidence of a crime and reporting it. What happened in those 6 minutes? Did she search the house? Call someone? Discuss what to say? 7 minutes. Annie arrived at Nancy's home at 11:56 a.m. She called 911 at 12:03 p.m. If she found blood on the front porch within the first minute, and the blood was in a location that would be difficult to miss, then 6 minutes passed between seeing evidence of a crime and reporting it. What happened in those 6 minutes? Did she search the house? Did she call someone else first? Did she discuss what to say before picking up the phone? The 911 recording has never been made public. Not the audio, not a transcript, not even a summary. In Arizona, 911 recordings are public records that reporters can legally request. In most high-profile missing person cases, the recording surfaces within days. 3 months into this investigation, nobody has heard what Annie said on that call. A retired detective named Bob Gilliam appeared on a podcast and addressed this directly. He said there is probably investigative information on that recording that detectives do not want the public to hear. He said the call might not surface until a trial date approaches. A trial. That word implies charges. It implies an arrest. It implies that the sealed 911 call is being held as evidence for a courtroom proceeding that investigators believe is coming. In cases where a family member is involved in a crime, trained investigators listen to 911 calls for one specific thing. Information the caller should not yet have. Details that a person arriving at a scene for the first time would not know. If Annie described the scene with a level of detail that exceeded what someone seeing it fresh would be able to report. Music. referencing the blood, the open back door, the flower pot propping it open, details about the interior. That is precisely the kind of information that gets a 911 call sealed and held for trial. Photograph of surface showing people at Nancy's home loading items into vehicles. Annie's Honda CR-V was visible. Boxes were being carried out. Nancy has not been declared dead. No death certificate exists. No probate proceeding has been initiated. No court has authorized anyone to remove personal property from the home of a missing woman whose case is an active federal investigation. And yet, boxes were leaving. A true crime reporter covering the case on the ground posted a question publicly. Someone plans to move into Nancy Guthrie's home. Who could it be? The response that went viral was even simpler. Someone who cannot afford their own property taxes. Nancy Guthrie has a son named Cameron. In 3 months of one of the most covered missing person cases in American history, Cameron has not made a single public statement. No press conference. No social media post. No interview. His absence from the public record is complete. And in missing person investigations where a family member is entirely absent from a narrative, that absence is never random. Sometimes it is grief. Sometimes it is legal advice from an attorney who says, stay quiet. And sometimes it means something else entirely. The DNA evidence at Quantico is being processed through probabilistic genotyping and genetic genealogy. The initial CODIS search came back negative. Whoever left that rootless hair sample in Nancy's home has no criminal record, no prior arrests, no convictions. That result eliminates career criminals and random opportunists. It describes someone living an ordinary life, someone who attends family dinners, someone who drives elderly women home at night, someone who signs powers of attorney and asks for loans that get turned down. CEC Moore and Astria Forensics are working on that sample. When they find something, it matters, and it has produced convictions in cases where every other method failed. NBC News built a specific protocol for this case. If breaking news develops during a live broadcast, Savannah is pulled from the set. A different anchor handles the story. The information is delivered to Savannah privately. That protocol was used on April 15th. Networks do not build those procedures for cases they believe are going cold. They build them for cases where they expect a moment, an arrest, a body, an identification that will hit a family member in real time on national television. Ed Smart, Elizabeth Smart's father, a man who knows what a family goes through in a case like this, appeared on News Nation and chose his words carefully. He said the Guthrie family has supposedly been cleared. Supposedly. That word is doing a lot of work. It is the word of a man who respects the official position while keeping the door open to the possibility that it is not the final position. And Brian Enton reported that cooperation between the Pima County Sheriff and the FBI has improved. But a sitting county official publicly accused the sheriff of letting personal feelings interfere with a federal investigation. That accusation has not been retracted. The walls are closing. The financial trail is documented. The DNA is being processed. The 911 call is sealed for a reason a retired detective says will become clear when a trial date is set. And Nancy Guthrie, a woman who said no to a loan, no to the alarm system that was never installed, no to the camera subscription that was never renewed, is still out there. Everyone left her more alone, more exposed, more reachable. And the last no she said to her daughter may have been the one that set everything in motion. The people who sat at that dinner table, who took that drive, who made that phone call, who loaded those boxes, they are running out of time to pretend they do not know. If you have any information, contact the FBI at 1-800-CALL-FBI or submit tips at tips.fbi.gov. The reward currently exceeds $1.2 million. This story is far from over. Subscribe now because in this case every update has changed what we thought we knew. This content is analytical based on publicly available sources for informational and awareness purposes only. It does not represent official conclusions. All individuals mentioned are presumed innocent until proven guilty. Viewers should consult additional independent sources for complete perspective.